After a 37-month hiatus, ever since opening night of Avengers Endgame, I made my long-awaited return to the cinema last night, and I guess the best commentary I can give on the current state of the woke wasteland we used to call our popular culture is to say I don't think I missed anything at all that was very great in those 3 calendar years that I didn't see the inside of a movie theater. Just lots of strong women of color who are the key to everything, lots of sanctimonious hectoring about current-day politics, and lots of people talking about their feelings in hallways. For the first couple years of my not going to the movies, well, first, obviously, it was because they closed all the theaters as part of the mass hysterical overreaction to the great communist Chinese Wuhan Kung Flu coronavirus of 2019, and then it was because if you want me to wear a stupid obedience muzzle, you're going to have to strap it across my cold, dead face. But after that, it was because there were no movies coming out that I gave 2 squirts of piss about seeing. But Top Gun Maverick was always on the proverbial radar screen. For the whole 3 years, I figured that was the flick I would probably wind up going back to the theater for. And so it was last night. But I actually have 2 things I want to review tonight, as you likely have already surmised from reading the episode title. And I am in the uncharted territory, at least since I've been doing this, of having 2 things to review where I liked both of them. I thought they were both great, and while it is more fun to do negative hate reviews, and it's more fun to watch them too, when movies and shows come out that are well written, well acted, about interesting subjects, and they are refreshingly non-woke, I think we should take the time to shine a light on that and to celebrate it, since we are, after all, the ones who are supposed to determine through our own stated preferences and the judicious allocation of our entertainment dollar what constitutes popular culture and what doesn't. But in recent years, there's been a weird departure from that paradigm where they just sort of shovel some dog shit onto your plate and tell you, trust us, this is what you really want for dinner, and if you don't eat it, you're a white supremacist. Now, the last episode of Winning Time came out a couple of weeks ago, and tonight is technically opening night for Top Gun Maverick, which I was not expecting to see in a nearly empty auditorium last night, but that's how it went. And I don't have a very good idea for how to separate the review, so I may wind up just switching haphazardly between the one and the other, but there are certain attributes that are shared by the show and the movie alike that I want to talk about too. Winning Time, which is subtitled The Rise of the Lakers Dynasty, if you haven't heard of it, is a 9-part streaming series on HBO Max which deals with the story of Dr. Jerry Buss purchasing the Lakers and the events of his first season as the owner, which was 1979-80, when the NBA was so culturally irrelevant they were showing the finals on tape delay. And here's hoping the NBA soon duplicates that same level of cultural irrelevance, because there is no league that more richly deserves it. Now, this is a show that, judging by the number of articles we've seen about it, and the number of mostly pissed-off reactions we've seen from some of the people depicted, it seemed to find a wider national audience than I might have thought it would. For me, 1980, that's the first year in sports that I have a vivid recollection of, so I remember the Lakers winning that title that year because it was a fairly big deal around here. Yeah, we had the Clippers at the time, I'll grant you, between 78 and 84, but nobody cared. There were always more Laker fans in San Diego anyway. Plus, my grandma was a big Laker fan, so a lot of my memories of the Showtime era are from watching the games at her house. The first thing I want to say about this show is that it does something that is decidedly unfashionable in the current day. It depicts the past in a way that doesn't seek to view the people and the events through the prism of current-day politics and social mores. Most importantly, most refreshingly, it depicts manly men doing masculine things without attempting to portray manhood itself as something intrinsically toxic or shameful. And are you listening, Gillette? You may want to take notes here. Dr. Jerry Buss, who's portrayed here by John C. Reilly in a role that really only John C. Reilly could do, is portrayed as exactly what he was, a friendly guy, a pretty good boss, whose personal habits were loathsome and execrable in just about every respect, who banged women half his age at a rate that would make John F. Kennedy blush. And what a challenge. I mean, for the writers, and especially for the actor, they have to make us feel empathy for a man whose behavior back in the 80s was merely eccentric and a bit creepy, but which today would be viewed as revolting and indefensible by everyone. And to some extent, the show manages to do the same thing with nearly all of the characters. Jeannie Buss is probably the only one in the thing who is not depicted as having massive, major character flaws. Magic Johnson is portrayed as an inveterate womanizer, which he was. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is depicted as an aloof asshole who tells autograph seekers to fuck off, which he was. Jerry West is portrayed as the red ass of all red asses, a guy who gets so worked up about everything you could stick a lump of coal up his ass and pull a diamond out in 2 weeks, which he was, and which he remains still at the age of 83, as evidenced by the fact that he wants to sue the producers of this show all the way to the Supreme Court because he feels he was portrayed so unflatteringly. And geez, Jerry, try a little less hard to play up to the stereotype, would you? I guess I'm running out of opening segment here. Let's pick this up on the flip side. Jim Eagle, if you please. From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where the ocean breeze smells almost as sweet as the Chinese smog. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to the program. I'm your eponymous host and humble servant. Top Gun Maverick is a unique picture for a couple of different reasons. First of all, you don't often get a direct sequel that comes out 36 years after the original film did. But also, because this movie has been delayed so many times for so long that it seems to have had its own unique journey right through the woke Hollywood era. It seems inconceivable that we're sitting here on the night the picture actually comes out, and it was 4 years ago that we saw the first trailer. And do you remember what everybody was talking about after that first trailer came out? They were talking about the fact that the Taiwan flag patch and the Japan flag patch had been removed from Maverick's leather jacket. And Paramount was very careful to show a long, nice close-up of the jacket in the trailer, as if to say to the Chi-Coms, see, look, Chi-Coms, we would never do anything to piss you guys off. See how compliant and obedient we are? See how we airbrush out anything that might potentially offend your Chi-Com sensibilities? And as it happens, the scene with the jacket comes very early on in the picture, like in the first 5 minutes, and I think I actually did a little fist pump when I saw that the Taiwan patch and the Japan patch had both been restored. But one can't help wondering, when were they restored? This movie was delayed half a dozen times for a total of 3 years. Its original release date was summer 2019. And in the intervening years, the woke mind virus invaded Hollywood, ran its course, and only just now the studios and the streaming platforms are getting around to realizing, oh, dear me, it looks like we've got woke and gone broke. We need to hurry up and unwokeify this thing pronto. So I think it's worth asking the question, how different a film would Top Gun Maverick have been if it came out in 2019 or 2020 or 2021? Would the China-appeasing jacket still have been in there? Would the picture have been about Maverick's journey to understanding the dangers of toxic masculinity and white privilege? Would he have been repeatedly outperformed and humiliated by a strong female pilot of color who's the key to everything and likes to talk about her feelings in hallways? But I am pleased to report that just like with Winning Time, Top Gun Maverick has no apparent axe to grind with the concept of manhood. The protagonist is a 60-year-old white male heterosexual, and he is never made to feel guilt or shame over it. There's a female pilot in the group, a couple of male pilots of color, and nobody mentions it or gives a damn. Here, we got the top 12 fighter pilots in the Navy. Here they are. We got some white ones, some brown ones. That one over there has even got lady parts. Who gives a shit? Let's go fly. I'm kind of glad I wound up reviewing these two particular things tonight because I was also pleasantly surprised to see, in Top Gun and in Winning Time alike, a great performance from an actor I previously could not stand. No exaggeration, if you asked me last month to name the two actors I find most insufferable, I probably would have said Jason Clarke and Miles Teller. Jason Clarke, he plays the aforementioned Jerry West in the Winning Time show, and I wish the real-life Jerry West had waited until the whole series had played out before he got all pissed off and started threatening lawsuits and stuff, because, yes, in the first few episodes, Jerry West does not come off as a sympathetic character. He's still the head coach at this point, but he doesn't want to be, because 99% of the time, great players make crappy, miserable coaches. Just ask Ted Williams. He can tell you all about that. Or rather, ask Ted Williams' disembodied head if you can figure out which freezer it's being stored in. But by the time we get to the last episode, there's nobody you're rooting harder for in this thing than Jerry West. He's not the coach anymore. He's begun making the transition to the front office, and by the end of the story, due to the quality of the writing and the quality of Jason Clarke's performance, which still sounds weird to say out loud, We understand as viewers that Jerry West is a good man with a good heart, and his red-ass personality and his screaming and his swearing, it's all just a function of how much he deeply loves the franchise and wants it to succeed. And similarly, Miles Teller in Top Gun, playing Lieutenant Bradley Bradshaw, call sign Rooster, disgruntled son of the late Lieutenant Goose what the hell was Goose's first name? It seems like I should know that, but I don't. But whatever. The hell with it. We're in a flat spin, Maverick. But generally speaking, I find Miles Teller almost as annoying as Jason Clarke, but they have both knocked it out of the park with these performances, both of which are crucial to the quality of the end result. In Winning Time, if Jerry West comes off looking like just a crazed lunatic who needs a handful of Valium, then the show doesn't work. If Rooster comes off looking like a whiny bitch like Miles Teller has in everything else I've ever seen him in, then Top Gun Maverick doesn't work. And I never would have guessed it, but you put a navy haircut and a porn mustache on Miles Teller, and he does bear rather a striking resemblance to Anthony Edwards in 1986. You know what else I learned from watching Winning Time? That being a professional actor is hugely overrated. The guy who plays Magic, he never acted before. The guy who plays Kareem, he never acted before. Solomon Hughes, that's the guy's name who plays Kareem. He has a couple of long, really intense scenes with Wood Harris, who's one of my favorite actors, who plays Spencer Haywood in this. But you watch these scenes play out, and it would never occur to anybody that one of these guys is a career professional in the acting game, and the other guy is a first-time neophyte. And how do you do that casting call? Anyway, how many actors do you expect to turn up when you put out a call for a 7'2" black guy who weighs 210 pounds? In any event, I never would have known Solomon Hughes was not a pro actor if I hadn't listened to the episode of the official podcast of the show where he was the interview subject. A very impressive young man, PhD in astrophysics from Stanford even. And there's another club I bet doesn't have a very big membership. 7-foot black astronomers. I bet that's a club almost as exclusive as Italian war heroes or Mexican hockey players. I'm just saying. I bet you don't have to rent a very big room to hold the 7-foot black astronomer convention in. Now, I need to give a word also to the visual presentation in Winning Time. We have talked before about the mistakes that are often made with period pieces, where they come off looking like a parody or a pastiche, just a series of anachronistic sight gags. And it often becomes so overbearing that it takes the viewer right out of the narrative. As an example, if the year being depicted is 1985, say, oftentimes the producers will just bring in a bunch of 1985 model year cars and call the job done, except that's not actually how the world works. If you were walking around in 1985, you would not see everybody driving around in a brand new 1985 car. Most people in 85 were still driving cars from the 70s or the 60s. And it's the same deal with wardrobe. We often see the 70s and the 80s depicted not as they actually were, but rather through the lens of the things we associate retrospectively with that time period. Winning Time, it makes neither of those mistakes. They present a version of 1980 Los Angeles that's closer to the reality than any dramatic production I've seen previously. And I don't know who the wardrobe person was, but they should win some kind of award for this. And if they don't, it's a travesty, as far as I'm concerned. There was a different challenge for the Top Gun picture, in that you want to trade on 80s nostalgia to some degree, but you don't want the thing to wind up being just an orgy of fan service or a paint-by-numbers remake of the first one. And I thought they struck that balance just about as well as it can be struck. I was reminded of George Lucas's famous line about how you don't want things to be directly derivative, but rather like poetry, so it rhymes with what came before. And so the Top Gun sequel, it begins with exactly the same song as the first one, the exact same series of title cards even, including the one that says, a Don Simpson, Jerry Bruckheimer production, even though Don Simpson's been dead for 25 years, but it was kind of a cool little touch. And then they do a very similar opening montage of aircraft carrier flight deck operations, but from then on, I mean, aside from Rooster singing Great Balls of Fire, there are really no other direct beats from the first movie. Nobody says, I feel the need for speed. Nobody sings, you've lost that lovin' feeling. They do have Rooster say one of Goose's lines, though, when he's in the back seat and says to Maverick, do some of that pilot shit. I mean, yeah, they do have a slow-motion beach football game that could be seen as an homage to the volleyball scene from the first picture, but aside from the title sequence and the first couple minutes, This is very much its own film with its own story, rather than one that's merely trying to replicate something that came before, and it's nice to see. It's unexpected. We're so accustomed to this industry being creatively bankrupt and out of ideas, we expect everything to be a cheap copy-paste of something else, or just a thinly veiled lecture on woke politics. And my God, the flight sequences, just tremendous. So as far as I'm aware, this is the first film production where all of the actors playing the pilots were flying in real aircraft while they were being filmed and doing their performances, and there's no way you could pull off anything close to this at ground level on a soundstage. When you watch a guy's face turn pink and his eyes roll back in his head as he's losing consciousness, it's because the actor is actually passing out from pulling 6 whatever G's. So I am really glad they delayed this thing for 3 years rather than succumbing to the pressure of releasing it on streaming, because this is a photographic achievement that demands to be seen on the big screen. That's all there is to it. Not only did they devise a system for squeezing 6 IMAX cameras into an F-18 cockpit, but the actors had to run the equipment themselves, since you can't very well put a cinematographer under the seat. If I have a complaint about Top Gun Maverick, it's that I wish the final mission wasn't so obviously based on the Death Star trench run from Star Wars. Even the training animations looked almost the same. I mean, on the one hand, it's potentially kind of a cute idea. I just would have preferred it to be a little bit less on the nose, is all. And if I have a complaint about winning time, and maybe this is just me getting old, I could have done with a lot less of the gratuitous sex and nudity. I didn't think it added anything to the story. I mean, I understand Jerry Buss is a sleazy old pervert. I don't need to see him finger bang a chick under a table at a Mexican restaurant in order to get the point across, but maybe that's just me. I think I almost forgot what it was like. The way you feel the day after you saw a movie that you really enjoyed. And I enjoyed unconditionally rather than, well, it was mostly pretty good except for the parts that were woke bullshit. Except for the part where the 86-pound woman of color who's the key to everything easily dispatches half a dozen trained male assassins and then talks about her feelings in a hallway. In the final analysis, I am giving 2 racist okay hand signs to Winning Time, and I am also giving 2 racist okay hand signs to Top Gun Maverick. I really would like to see this movie just kill it at the box office and drive a stake through the heart of woke Hollywood once and for all. And I wonder how many fake millennial reporters are going to give the picture a bad review just because it's got a white male protagonist who never has to grapple with the consequences of its toxic white maleness and the effect that his systems of privilege have on historically marginalized communities. And there is not nearly enough representation in this picture either. Not even a one-legged albino midget in the background or anything. Just a story about a white man and a white lady who live happily ever after. It is horrifying and unacceptable that movies like this can still be made, where white people wind up happy and content. Because what would George Floyd think? And we'll leave it there for this week. Here is wishing everyone a delightful, edifying weekend as we honor those who made the ultimate sacrifice to ensure that we could have freedoms for our government to take away from us. I'll see you Wednesday. Until then, do not comply. Get off my lawn.